Hello and welcome to our election special here at Boom. We're calling our series US Elections Simplified. That's because we've been asking the very basic and simple questions, focusing really on explanatory journalism, and we're not doing speculation or even the intelligent kind or chasing after the latest news. And normally we would have known by now, at least 36 hours before, in fact, who the winner would have been of the US elections. But it's been 2 days since voting and counting began, and we still don't know who it is. And both presidents, or both presidential candidates, I should say, have a path to victory, it seems like. We've been speaking to Louis Jacobson of Politifact, and he joins us once again. Louis, many thanks for joining us here at Boom. What's the big picture looking like? And I understand that you've had very, very little sleep in the last 2 days.
That's true. So right now, I would rather be Joe Biden than Donald Trump. If you look at where the votes are still needing to be counted, um, uh, Biden is looking like he should be able to get enough votes in Pennsylvania at the very least to go over the 270 mark, which would get him the presidency. The count is slow. Pennsylvania has had some issues in terms of they couldn't start counting the ballot until after the polls closed, and so they got kind of a late start for various reasons. But the trend lines look good, even though Trump is still ahead at this point. There are lots of Democratic areas that are still out, and a lot of votes cast by mail, which were heavily for Joe Biden, still to be counted. So that would be the easiest way for him to get to 270. He's still in the lead in Arizona and in Nevada. And those two states would also get him to 270. There, the late votes are favoring Trump by a bit in Arizona, probably favoring Biden in Nevada. But those two states are pretty close right now and getting closer. So we can't quite say for sure that either Biden or Trump has won. Georgia is the other major state that is still up in the air. Trump is basically held on to a very, very sharply dwindling lead in Georgia. This is a state that the Democrats have not won since, I believe, 1992. And there's definitely a path for Biden to win that state as well. But still going to be very close. So definitely premature to say that either candidate has won that state. If Biden manages to sweep those four, which is a definite possibility, then we could be looking at a fairly decisive electoral college victory. If Trump can win all four, obviously he would win. But basically, if you look at the national popular vote, just the number of raw votes cast everywhere, they're still counting that. We're nowhere near done counting all of those. Traditionally, those late votes, because California tends to have a large late vote, and it's a very Democratic state. Also, New York is kind of slow at counting its ballots. It's also a very Democratic state on balance. Already, that national popular vote total is pretty decisively favoring Biden. That's probably going to only go up. If it hasn't passed Clinton's margin from 2016 over Trump, then it probably will fairly soon, and will probably get bigger. Certainly, Biden has won. If you look at the percentages at the end of the day, will probably have won the popular vote by a pretty decisive margin. And the Electoral College, it could be very narrow, or it could be fairly decisive, depending on how these 4 or 5 very narrowly divided states right now are going to shake out in the end.
Yeah, I've not seen anything like it, and I've been following elections in the US for about 20 years now. My follow-up to that is, we understand Pennsylvania is where it's going to take the longest. But is there a feeling that today is Thursday in the morning or in the afternoon, depending on where you are in the United States? Is there a feeling that by the end of Thursday night for you, that's Friday morning here in India, we will have some kind of understanding of what the other states, other than Pennsylvania, are doing, how they're doing?
The count is slow, and I think we're going to make incremental progress hour by hour. I don't know if we can say that the sort of media organizations that do their calling of the race, which is they're like data professionals sit down and see where all the votes are going. If they'll be able to make an official call. Of course, the call is not official in the sense that it doesn't mean anything in terms of actual certified votes for these states, but it does kind of put the media stamp on the sense that, yeah, so and so is going to win, even though it's not official. I think it's possible we could get something by the end of today. It would not surprise me if it kicked over into Friday, perhaps. We just don't know exactly how the ballot processing is going, but it is kind of slow. I think the trend lines will be able to say, yeah, Biden is not officially called in Arizona, but he looks like he's going to hold on. That's something we may know, or it could easily be Trump is gaining enough votes that it's still going to be a very close race, and we shouldn't decide yet who's going to win this.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to put on your fact-checking hat and tell us a little bit about misinformation in the last 36 to 48 hours. We understand it's kind of changed now. It's no longer the kind of misinformation we saw before the election. And President Trump's statement in which he cast doubt on the legitimacy of the entire process created another stream or another wave of misinformation. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's looking right now?
Yeah, so we at Politifact, a bunch of our staff is focused exclusively on the question of misinformation on social media, particularly Facebook. And we have a partnership with Facebook where if we rate something false or certainly questionable, then Facebook acts by downgrading that post so it doesn't get shared as widely. And for people who do see it, it gives them a chance to basically click on our story first to sort of show what we found about the claims in that statement. So we're definitely seeing a lot of misinformation, things like, polling place irregularities, what the maps and charts of ballot counting in certain places show. Yesterday, our staff, I think, posted 14 specific fact checks on the election, just of social media posts. So that's one realm. And then, of course, you have the politicians, which the most prominent example is the president, who came out at 2 a.m. The day after Election Day, in other words, shortly after the polls closed, and said that he won the election. I was up at that hour, and so were a couple editors, and we decided to push out a fact check, which we gave a pants on fire rating to, which is our worst rating. Basically, the polls had closed, but the counting was still going on, and we knew roughly how many ballots were still out, where they were located, and so it would kind of be like stopping a soccer game at 3/4 of the way through and saying I've won when it's still a close game, and you have still a bunch of time left. So it was premature. We did our first 4 a.m. fact check we've ever done. And then, so we got that out there. I did another fact check yesterday. Trump had tweeted out that's also another venue he's been using, Twitter, to sort of give his spin on events. And he said that in lots of key states, he had been ahead, and Democrats in the cities were finding ballots, surprise ballot dumps, basically. And I was able to look, since I've been following this, on the night of the election, I've been following the websites as they showed the votes coming in, state by state, and the website I was using, it showed it basically colored red or blue who was leading at the time. It didn't matter that they were expected to win. So there were some solidly Democratic states that happened to be, Trump leads very early on. And what I found is, yes, that some of the states that the president had talked about had been for Trump and then turned blue as time went on. But there were a lot of states, probably even more states, that had started as blue for Biden, and then Trump caught up and took over at the very end. So it's not as if the president was the only one experiencing this sort of phenomenon. Joe Biden was also leading in Texas initially. He was leading for about the first 80% of the time in North Carolina, and he's probably going to lose North Carolina, Biden is. So there are a whole bunch of states that just flip-flopped depending on which ballots were cast from which particular areas and what types of ballots were cast. So we gave that a false rating.
Right. And for viewers who are just new to Politifact, it might be worth pointing out that Politifact has a truth-o-meter. And so for the most egregious of lies, you give it a liar, liar, pants on fire kind of rating. And you have true and you have mostly true. And, it's the spectrum in between. A final question to you, Louis. What do you think, how effective have the social platforms been, Twitter and Facebook particularly?
So, I can speak most directly to Facebook because we do work with them, and there's just so much misinformation out there that our small staff can't possibly check everything. But we are getting a lot of fact checks up, particularly the ones that are getting spread the most widely. And I do think the system has been helpful. Who knows? In the end, if it changes people's minds, I think that if you're likely to believe something that is pretty clearly nonsensical, you're not going to believe us. One thing that I do notice, one of my duties is to be the person who checks our email inbox several times a day to see what people are saying to us. And I've been doing that for 10 or 11 years now. And since we started work on the Facebook project, I've noticed a real spike upwards in people who are really angry at us for trying to tell them the truth, or certainly the best version of the truth as we can find. And it's because previously, before we got involved with the Facebook project, we were basically publishing articles for people who wanted to read them to go there. They would see a mention of them, or they'd go directly to our website, or somebody would say, "Hey, check out this story." Now our articles are being placed on the social media pages of people who are really, really not wanting to hear from us, and they sometimes snap back at us for that. So we are getting our information out there in the hands of people who are not, eager to hear what we have to say, which does drive up the tensions. And I don't know how successful it is changing their minds. I doubt it's very successful. Yes. But we've always been gearing our efforts at people who are interested in learning, what the facts are, who have an open mind, who have critical thinking. So I do hope that for at least those people, we are being somewhat helpful.
That's very interesting to know. On that note, we'll let you go, Louis. Thank you so much. And we hope that you get a little more sleep tonight.
Thank you.